Moving on to the next category of interactions to create a flow, we will now look at the options under the integrations category. These options allow the flow to be integrated with other services or external systems. The API component provides responses to users using data from a server. Depending on the API configuration, it is possible to define parameters and responses. This option allows adding the parameters that will be sent along with the API request, such as identifiers or mandatory filters. And from here, we can configure how the data received from the API will be managed and processed within the flow. To configure the API within the node, we must enter the URL. To do this, we select Edit to the right of the node and then paste the API address here. Once the URL is configured, we can select the method of the request. Options include get, post, put, and delete, depending on the operation we need to perform. If we only want to retrieve information, we will select get. In the headers section, we can add additional settings to indicate how the response should be handled. For example, if we select accept, with the value application JSON, we can get a response in JSON format. In addition, it is possible to add variables and more headers if necessary. Let's move on to the email option. This option sends emails as part of the interactions within the flow, which is very useful for notifications. We can configure the following fields. Recipients. Here we enter the email addresses of the recipients. We can add several addresses separated by commas or press enter after typing each address. In this field, the subject of the email is defined. We can insert variables to customize the subject with dynamic data. Then in the body, we write the content of the email. We can format the text with basic editing options such as bold, italics, underline, lists, and links. We can also insert emojis or variables. And finally, the spreadsheet option. This option allows us to write data to a spreadsheet directly from the flow. It is possible to use this node to store user responses or any other information in real time, organizing the data in specific columns of the spreadsheet. To configure this node, we select Edit. This side menu is displayed where we can enter the ID and name of the spreadsheet. The ID is obtained from the URL of the Google spreadsheet, and the name corresponds to the specific tab of the file where we want to save the data. For example, Sheet 1. In addition, we must ensure that we load the JSON file with the service account credentials and that the service account has permissions on the spreadsheet. The node also displays a drop-down field to select the variables to be written in the spreadsheet. These variables should be organized in the order in which they will appear on the spreadsheet. It is also possible to add other context variables if necessary. Good. Next, we will see the options available under the Responses category.